All right, good morning. We're on to lesson 10.4, make bar graphs. How does a bar graph help you compare information? So come along and join the ride as we learn how to make a bar graph.
Dan keeps track of the food he sells at the soccer game. He sells all of the food on the table. Let's make a bar graph to show the food Dan sells. The bar graph will show the number of each kind of food in the picture. He sells pizza, hot dogs, and tacos. First, let's count the number of pizza slices that Dan sold. We will shade one square in the bar graph for each item we count. 1, 2. Dan sold 2 slices of pizza. Now let's count the number of hot dogs that Dan sold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Dan sold 6 hot dogs. How many tacos did Dan sell? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Dan sold 5 tacos. Now your bar graph shows the number of each kind of food that Dan sold at the soccer game. What does your graph show about the food Dan sold? You can see that the row with hot dogs is the longest, so Dan sold more hot dogs than any other food. This flower garden has daisies and sunflowers growing in it. Are there more white daisies or yellow sunflowers in the garden? Make a bar graph to find out. Shade one box for each flower in the garden. Start with the white daisies. Shade the boxes in this row of the graph. As you count the white daisies, select one box for each white daisy in the garden. Then check your work. Great job! There are 4 daisies in the garden, so you shaded 4 boxes. Now make a bar on the graph for the yellow sunflowers. Shade the boxes in this row. As you count the yellow sunflowers, select one box for each of the yellow sunflowers. Then check your work. Excellent! There are 7 sunflowers in the garden, so you shaded 7 boxes. Your bar graph is done. What information does it show? It shows you how many of each type of flower is in the garden. Are there more daisies or more sunflowers? Select your answer. That's right. There are more sunflowers. The bar on the graph for sunflowers is longer than the bar for daisies.
Hey, Joey, what are you doing?
Oh, hey, I'm inventing a monster truck that will defeat all other monster trucks in existence forever, ruling the world of monster trucks. That's right.
Well, what have you got so far?
It's wheels. It's gonna have lots and lots and lots and lots of wheels. Actually, Professor,
What?
being an inventor isn't easy.
No?
I've got to keep track of lots and lots and lots of things.
It's true.
And information and wow.
Well, actually, I can show you a way of organizing all that information in a way that makes a lot more sense.
Oh, that's so great. That'd be
Well, it's all math, so let's take a look at it together and see if this helps you.
Cool.
Okay, so let's take a look and see how picture graphs and bar graphs are alike. Now, remember when I asked you to ask some of your friends about what their favorite toys are?
Yes, I did that.
Okay, so now I want to know what they said. So I want to know how many of your friends voted for the bear as their favorite toy?
3,
3. And how many said blocks?
2,
And how many said marbles?
5.
5. Okay, so what we see here is 3, 2, and 5. And
That's right.
we can now represent that in an organized way, actually, by first taking a look at a picture graph. That's where we look at the key. It tells us that each circle is going to stand for 1 vote. So in this case, I see we have 3 people that want the teddy bear as their favorite. So
Right.
1, 2, 3. That represents 3 people.
Right.
Now, for the blocks, we see 2 people voted for blocks. So I'm going to put 2 circles in.
And then you need 5 for the 5 people who like the marbles.
That's exactly right, Joey. So I've got 2, 3, 4, 5. And the neat thing is, look how we've organized the information. Without even counting, we can just look at it and see what got the most votes, because we can just see which, in fact, is longer, which has more circles, if you will. And you can just look at it and see, oh, the marbles are the most number of votes.
Watch this. Look, the marbles are the most votes.
Very good.
I
Now,
love those.
there's another way of graphing it, and that's called a bar graph. And let me have you think about it, and why don't you think about it too, Joey, and then we'll actually graph the bar graph together.
Cool.
Now, a bar graph, in fact, is very much like a picture graph, but instead of using circles or other kind of shapes, we're just going to use a bar. So in this case, the bear we see had 3 votes, so I'm just going to color in 3 and make a bar that's 3 units long.
Oh, I like that too.
And you can make it as pretty as you want. I'm not very good at coloring, as you can see, Joey, but I'm doing the best I can. And that's a pretty decent bar. That's 3 units long. And you can see that here, we see the number 3 written down there tells us 1, 2, 3. We have 3 units. Now, for the blocks, we only need to color in 2 blocks. So our bar for this one is going to be shorter because the number is less. So there's that. And then finally, 5. So I go to 5. So
Oh,
there's
that's
the 5.
a long one.
It's going to be a big one. Sorry, I hope you have time to wait around and not going to work on your truck for a little bit.
I'm thinking about it.
I know, but let me see. See, I'm coloring it in. And the important thing is, Joey, that just like with the previous graph, this one, still the longest bar is going to be the one that has the most votes. And so
How about that?
you can just visualize it and again see it's going to be the marbles. So in fact, we see that these are very similar because the picture graphs and bar graphs show the same information in a very organized, clear way. And you can see how they kind of are very similar to each other, just different ways of looking at it.
Ah, that's really, really neat, Professor.
How are picture graphs and bar graphs alike? We have both show information in an organized way, both use pictures to display information, and both show information in a disorganized way. So think about that. We're not going to answer it here. You'll answer it on your Google form. Hopping right into our textbook, Lesson 10.4, found on page 593. We see a very familiar graph like what we saw in the interactive math lesson. So, the title is Food Sold at the Soccer Game. Over here, the label says kinds of food, so that means the kinds of food sold at the soccer game. Here are the pictures and words, pizza, hot dogs, and tacos. And then this is the number of food items sold. So this shows how many tacos were purchased, how many hot dogs, and how many pizza. So you will need to go through, find your pizzas, color in a box to match how many pizzas, find the hot dogs, color in a box for each hot dog you count, and for tacos, same thing. Color in a box for each taco found. Remember, we are doing a bar graph, not a picture, so we're not drawing circles. We're coloring in the box. Are there more daisies or sunflowers in the garden? Make a bar graph to find out. Shade, that means to color. Shade one box for each flower in the picture. Flowers in the garden is the title. Kinds of flowers is our label on this side by the daisies and sunflowers. And our label for how many is number of flowers. They have already colored in one box for the daisies. So one of these daisies is already counted for, so don't count it. Then fill in the rest of the boxes for the daisies and each of the boxes for the sunflowers. Then write, there are more blank in the garden. There are more daisies in the garden. There are more sunflowers in the garden. Use the bar graph to answer that question and write the name of the flowers that has more. Now, the next part with making the bar graphs, it's going to be tricky because we're not in the classroom, and so you can't just easily ask each other to answer. But you can have your parents talk to friends. You can call friends. You can get on social media. Well, your parents can get on social media and ask the same exact questions like this one. Hand we use to write. Do you use left or right to write? Parents can ask, friends can respond, and then they can tell you what they found. Then write down which hand do more children use to write. Next one, drawing conclusions. So using the bar graph information that we have learned how to do, and then using the graph to answer all of these different questions. Once again, asking 10 friends. So work with your parents to figure out a way that you can ask other people these questions and get answers. Question 3, which toy did the most children choose? Circle. Remember to look up here once you have your data entered. Number 4, how many children chose blocks? Use your graph to answer the question.